The Dreamcast was widely praised as one of the best consoles ever, but there isn't a single console out there that doesn't have its stinkers. I am the Game Collector, and this is Second Opinion Games, and today we look at the top 10 worst Dreamcast games.
Second Opinion Games.
Before I get started, I better just play a game that doesn't make me hate my life. Check out Bust a Move 4. It's just a simple puzzle game where you launch balls at the top of the screen. It's not bad in any way. A matter of fact, I actually enjoy it, but there's one little problem with it. It really doesn't feel like a next-gen game, or at least a next-gen game at the time. This definitely could have been done, and probably was done, on the PlayStation 1. I just happened to pick it up on the Dreamcast, and I was, well, kind of underwhelmed. However, it didn't infuriate me like the next game. MDK2. Now again, a lot of people are probably screaming at me right now to say that this is not a bad game. However, I played it back at the time, and remember the Dreamcast only had one analog stick? That means you actually have to use that stick to aim around, and the buttons on the controller to move in all the directions. This means it's nearly unplayable by today's standards, and that's just when you play as the sniper guy. Later you play as a dog with guns, and then the controls get even wonkier, and then you play as some type of mad scientist running around adding two things together to add a puzzle element into an action game that definitely did not need to be here. And also your weapons, sometimes I'm just not sure what they're supposed to do or how they're supposed to operate. There's huge jumps that you have to sometimes clear, and even though you don't know if you're really gonna make it across the first time you play, and if you wanted to play this game now, well then download it on the WiiWare, going back in time several years, because they actually made it work on the Wii. On the Dreamcast, the controls are just a mess, and it will make you hate your life to try and replay it. Or maybe just play it on the PC. But definitely stay away from the Dreamcast. Number 9, Championship Surfer. So you have a surfing game. Oh, great, because I can't surf in real life. And guess what? I can't surf here either. You can pick from a whole bunch of people. Not any Jack Johnson, though. Sadly, he's off the menu. You can only pick from 8 different people, one of which is female, but she's in a wetsuit, so not in a bikini, so I don't want to pick her. Heck, you could even play as a little kid. Had they find 8 championship surfers and one of them happened to be a tiny human, I don't understand. And when I play this game, I just get pissed off because I can't stand on this board even for a second. After about an hour, I manage to stand up and move around the tiniest little bit, and then I hit mines that are floating in the water for some reason. If you have to surf where there's mines that will explode and kill you, it's definitely not a hobby I want to take up. And this game is just terrible on every level. From the controls to the sound to the graphics, and the fact that I'm not interested at surfing at all means that this should drown in the ocean immediately, just like I would. Number 8, Holy Casino. Do you like gambling? How about gambling with money without any risk? Well, in that case, this is just terrible because it takes all of the thrill of gambling with real money away. Sure, you could probably practice your Texas Hold'em skills, except for the fact that the bland cartoon characters you're staring at don't have any tells. They just stare back at you. But it does get worse when they actually talk to you because they are completely uninteresting in every single way. And there are plenty of different games that you can play here, whether it's blackjack or roulette or just some standard slot machines, which those are really boring in a video game. But the worst part about the whole thing is that you have to stare at loading screens for up to 20 seconds in between each of these games because you're going to get bored of them really fast. Means that you're going to spend more time staring at loading screens than you're actually going to spend playing this game. And then you're going to pull it out and throw it in the trash because that's where it belongs. Number 7, South Park Rally. Early South Park games were just not very good. And this one actually controls quite well, so how did they possibly screw it up with the beloved characters of the South Park universe? Well, how about the fact that they didn't make the courses linear? Instead, you just drive around to different checkpoints And what makes it worse is that you absolutely have to come in first place to move on, which means if you screw up just a little tiny bit, or if you don't know what all the power-ups are, and some of them are just so obscure, how could you know what they were? Saddam Hussein's face is flying all over the screen, you're throwing a prostitute and possibly herpes at people? This is confusing on every level, including how it even got greenlit to begin with. It's one that you should stay away from on every single console, especially the Dreamcast. Number 6, Sonic Shuffle. Mario Party, this is not. You know how sometimes things are kind of random in Mario Party? Well, it seems that the developers at Sega really focused in on the total randomness instead of, making a fun game with fun minigames. On top of it, the boards that you play on are just totally scattered with crap everywhere, and it's a card game on top of it. You couldn't just roll a freaking die and then pick which way you want to move. No, instead, you have to draw cards and sometimes draw other people's cards, and then other times just buy cards with coins that or rings that you picked off of the map. And any way you look at it, you're gonna hate this game. Even playing with good friends, you're gonna hate it. Even playing drunk with good friends, you're gonna hate it and really start to question your life choices up until this point. And then look at Sonic and the characters here. They're all cel-shaded kind of awkwardly. Why couldn't they just use the character models that they had from Sonic Adventure? Those were quite good at the time, but this game looks like total crap, and it's boring too. Number 5, Spirit of Speed 1937. Hey, here's a fun thing you guys could do. You should look up on Google when LJN completely dissolved as a company. It was probably around 1995. Well, this game came out in 1999 under the LJN banner. So that's some promising aspect right there, because Acclaim owned LJN at the time, and this game was so terrible they didn't want to hurt their own brand, so they pulled out one that was already pretty much destroyed. And when you start racing around the tracks, the first thing that's going to be assaulted is your eardrums, because this is the worst sounding racing game I have ever played in my entire life. And I've played Club Drive. Speaking of that game, this actually controls worse than Club Drive on top of it. Sometimes when you're just on a straightaway, not even touching the controller and just holding down the acceleration button, your car will spin out and smash into walls. Also, the frame rate sometimes can drop down into the single digits, and you're always going to lose no matter what, even if you set it on easy, just because, the game is just horrible, and you can't even play with the volume on, because just listen to it. It is terrible. I strongly say stay away from this game, because it's probably the worst racing game ever. Number 4, Kiss Psycho Circus. Yes, this is the very worst first-person shooter on the Dreamcast, and completely destroying the Kiss franchise name in what could have been a very promising game. First of all, they made it too dark. Sometimes you can't even see the screen at all. Why bother even having graphics at this point when you can just stare at a black screen? And then you pick up melee weapons, you have to carefully shoot all of your targets, which respawn from these generators similar to Gauntlet, which is a game that you'd rather be playing than this one, because also the first-person controls with that single analog stick do not get along well. Now, other games like Quake 3 Arena did a lot better. Also in Quake 3 Arena, you could customize the controls any way you want, even play keyboard and mouse. You cannot do this in this game, and your character is completely uninteresting. So running around this dull world taking out dull creatures, why would you even want to own this game? Well, to play it as a music CD in your car, because there's some hidden Kiss songs on here. However, when I put the same CD in my Xbox One, it can't read it at all, so go figure. I can't figure that out. Maybe if you guys can, let me know. But for now, I'm gonna take this game and throw it back in my car, where it's the only place I will play it. Number 3, Mortal Kombat Gold. Well, first of all, it's definitely better than the standard Mortal Kombat 4 on the PlayStation and the Nintendo 64, and the Dreamcast controller, again, is not very well suited for fighting games of this type. But what I really disliked about it was the fact that it jumped from 2D to 3D at the worst possible time, or at the very least adjacent to the worst possible time, because the polygon count here is just plain terrible. also pulling off special moves reliably is just not gonna happen. And in a competitive fighting game, that is the one thing that needs to work properly in order to have a good fighting game. Sure, there's some fatalities here that some of them are cool and some of them aren't, but for the most part, this game is just plain trash. It took all the way up to Mortal Kombat 9 before they figured out how to go back to a more 2D style to make a good fighting game. And all the ones in between Mortal Kombat Trilogy and Mortal Kombat 9 are total garbage, including this game. Number 2, Wild Metal, a game made by Rockstar. So you knew that you were gonna get a huge open world tank blowing up everything type of game. No, it's more of a collectathon with tanks, and you still get to blow up everything. So that's kind of cool, except tanks sometimes move really slow. So that means you have to try and go out of your way to find the fastest possible tank, and then you'll start playing and you'll think the controls are a little wonky, but not terrible. The graphics are there, but not terrible. And then you start sinking hours of your life into it before you realize that the game is actually really terrible. So after playing for about 40 hours, eventually I just sat my controller down and said, I hate playing this game. The fact that it was remarkably average just sucked me in, and the fact that it was a new Dreamcast game that I wanted to love just left me frustrated and a near broken man. If you want to look at why the Dreamcast failed, well, this is probably it. Number 1, The Evil Dead: Hail to the King. I was a huge fan of the Evil Dead movies, and you even get sort of a quasi-retelling of the story up until this point. That also seems to be a trope of the Evil Dead franchise. Just continuously retell the backstory until you eventually get it right. Or just everyone already knows it because they've seen the movies. I pre-ordered this game, I spent full retail price on it, and when I started playing, well, it has tank controls and is more like Resident Evil, which would be okay, except for the enemies just completely respawn non-stop. You could only hear a creature scream, "I'll swallow your soul," so many freaking times. Yes, I still occasionally plug in this game just to hear Bruce Campbell's sweet voice, but I cannot play this at all. I even tried to hook up cheating devices, but there is no dang codes for the darn game out there that I could find, and I just do not have the patience for it. Even when I watch other people speedrun this game, I get no enjoyment out of it. It just looks like trash from start to finish. How they could have taken such a great idea and made such a crappy game and no one stopped them. That's why this goes down as the very worst Dreamcast game ever. But of course, that's just my opinion. Thanks for watching.
Groovy. You're here to play the game, right? Press the button. See that over there? That's the one. Press it.
Hopefully you guys didn't enjoy this video because I had a terrible time making it. I don't think I ever want to do another of these worst of ever again. I'm probably going to have to at some point, but I had to take a whole extra week on this video just because it was painful for me to play these terrible Dreamcast games. So what do you think was the worst Dreamcast game? Let me know in the comments down below. I will read them, but don't expect me to make it into a video because I don't think I can. So until later, I will see you again, guys.